A transfer of rulership is coming, and the kingdom of heaven will be on earth. Righteousness will be spread throughout the whole four corners of the earth. Wickedness will be put down. Eternal life. That's what's promised to the elect. All right, all Israel, but it starts with the elect. And that's how the earth will be governed by immortals, perfect angelic forces who are going to come down and rule on earth. Extraterrestrial bodies will be able to do things that humans do, but in heavenly bodies. Like eating, drinking. Did not Yahushua say he's going to drink wine with us in the kingdom? Well, how do you drink wine with a spiritual body? Well, we're going to have out of this world capabilities in those new bodies.
Look, when Babylon is destroyed on fire, it's going to shake up the whole world. We're going to be beamed up, the hopeful elect. If we're the elect, we're going to be beamed up. And we're going to see this destruction pursuant to Psalms 91 and other scriptures. And we're going to hover over Babylon and we're going to see the destruction. We're going to get a ringside seat to the war of Armageddon. And then we're going to come back down. When we come back down to the earth, we taking everything over. The saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Kakodash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples for his younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word in truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Al Shah. All right, and what I want to get into today, okay, is dealing with the book, all right, of Second Timothy, the third chapter. All right, we've made to the third chapter. And in this epistle, you know, the apostle Paul, you know, he opens up and he speaks, you know, in prophecy. You know, speaking of, you know, the dangers, okay, of the last days, all right, in which, you know, you had dangerous times, you know, back then, all right, but prophetically in the spirit, we know, all right, that the spirit was speaking through Apostle Paul, speaking of these times that we're in now, you know, because this is coming, we're coming into the worst time ever, okay, and all the ingredients, all right, needed, okay, to fulfill, you know, the scriptures that speak about this being the worst time since the earth ever was. Well, they're here, okay, because the earth has never had this much weaponry, you know, where common citizens have, you know, firepower, okay, they can take out multiple people quick, you know, even these YNs, what they call the switches, okay, so everyone is armed. You know, there was never a time when people was armed with this high-tech weaponry, okay, that's never been a scenario in history. These nations have all this military hardware, even, you know, the conventional, even before you go nuclear, you know, these nations have, you know, military hardware that's extremely destructive, okay, leading up to the nukes, you see? all these other devices, that the devil has, he has weaponized, this, all right, eases, okay? It has weaponized frequencies, okay? So with all the ingredients needed, for the worst time ever is here, okay? So when you go into it, and we're going to read in the NLT, all right, when you go into it, it says, you should know this, Timothy, that in the last days, there will be very difficult times, okay? So we're told this all throughout the scriptures, okay, about these difficult times. When you go to the book of Luke, all right, chapter 21, here in the KJV. All right, you go to Luke chapter 21. All right, and you go to verse 25, and this is going into what? The second coming of Yahushua. Okay, the build up to that is going to be a major tribulation. You see, it says Luke 21:25. It says, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars. All right, which we're constantly seeing what eclipse, blood moon, wolf moons, all different. They even had a blue moon. Okay, that's extremely rare. All right, and it says, and there shall be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the stars and upon the earth, distress of nation with perplexity. Okay, the seas and waves roaring. Okay, so it said distress of nations and perplexity. Let's get the word perplexity. All right. Here you get this word in the Greek.
Strong's G 640, aparia. Aparia.
All right, aparia in the Greek for perplexity. Okay, and it goes into, all right, come on, man. I thought it has. It says the state of one who is in perplexity. Let's see. Thought they had more than this. I ain't looked it up in a while. I might have to do a on Google. Let's see if it gives us something in the root. Okay, here we go. All right, it must have been in the book. All right, it says to be without resources. Wait a minute, it's not the government speaking about taking away resources, and not only for, people that get assistance, but for everyday people. All right, resources are going to become scarce, if they have a system where people are, running through their savings, food is becoming unaffordable. Okay. So it's not going to take much, to have people without resources. Okay, a few days of the trucks running, a few weeks. Okay, grid shut down, a few weeks, and resources are going to be depleted. All right, the resources that people have access to. Okay, so to be in straits, to be left wanting, straits and difficulties, to be embarrassed. You see, pride brought low. Okay, to be in doubt, not to know which way to turn, and this describes the times that we're coming into. Okay, and be a lack of resources. People going to be in straits, which means a position of difficulty. They're going to be left wanting. Okay, which means lacking. All right, to be embarrassed. All right, all this pride, that's going to be wiped away. Okay, they're going to be in the doubt. They're not going to know what's going on. Just one thing after another. Okay, living in, the worst time ever. You see, the Lord finna take this proud generation through the worst time ever. Okay, and it said not to know which way to turn, to be at loss with oneself, to be in doubt, not to know how to decide or what to do, to be perplexed. Okay? And this is the state that society is about to be in. Okay? And all roads lead to perplexity, man. All right. Um, so let's read this, verse 26. Men's heart, all right, failing them for fear and for looking after those things which are coming upon the earth, for the powers, okay, of heaven shall be shaken, man. Even, dealing with the elites, but people hearts, you know, they gonna be stroking out, man. People's hearts and also people's minds too. It's gonna be failing them. People gonna lose and bug out, you know, just based on the things that's happening, because Esau, he played these psyop games, but wait till the Most High start playing psyops, you know. He know how to bug people out on a whole nother level. Okay, so these are the times. Okay, is Apostle Paul speaking to Timothy about the latter days where we're here. Okay, we're building up to perplexity. There's no doubt. People are, perplexed and complaining now, but it's going to be on a whole nother level. All right. So going back into 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 1, and it says, for people will only love themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at the Most High, disobedient to their parents and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. Okay? They will consider nothing sacred, man. And this is what we see in this society where everything is a joke. Everything is a spoof. Okay? People love themselves, self-worship, all right, hyper individualism, okay, boastful, proud, scoffing at the Most High. Okay? And I looked it up real quick. Let's go into the chat real quick. Just to give it a little substance. Let's go here to all right, so I looked it up as it has there been a decline in belief in the higher power in society today. Is today's culture more into self-worship? So you go into it, says yes, to a significant degree, there is evidence that belief in the higher power in classical or traditional religious terms has declined in many societies. And at the same time, cultural trends towards individualism and self-focus have strengthened. I'll break it down in two parts. What the data shows about religious belief and what data shows about self-worship. All right. It says, is belief in the higher power declining? Okay, what the data says. The US, all right, and dealing with these numbers, it's only limited on to who they ask. Okay, but just by gauging society that the fear of a higher power has declined sharply. Okay, because the things that the people do and say have no end. It says in the U.S., for example, a Gallup poll found that 81% of Americans said they believe in the Most High in 2022. All right, in God. All right, because and that's another thing. Their concept of a higher power, because they don't know the true power. All right, this world has no clue about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right, but they will find out during judgment. Okay, it says down from 87% in 2017. Another poll by the Pew Research Center found that the share of U.S. adults identifying a Christian has fallen from 78% in 2007 to 62 in recent years, and Christianity has taken a big L. All right, this last decade. Christianity is an absolute joke. Okay, and if you're in the Christian church, all right, especially in the nigga Christian church, all right, you are the least informed about what's going on. Okay, and it says, It said the decline is especially marked among younger adults, liberals, and people who identify with no religion. For example, only about 68% of 18 to 29-year-olds in one poll said they believe in God, compared with much higher rates among older adults. And Esau has a design where each generation is becoming more and more godless, man. And that's why the Lord is getting ready to intervene with judgment. These times, these dangerous times is for this. Remember, we talk about the worst time since the earth ever was. And we have to understand the Lord is doing this for the wicked, beginning with Esau, okay, these other nations and 2/3 of our people. Like he's bringing the worst time ever for them, and that's why we, continue on following Yahweh, man, okay, serving the Lord in fear and trembling. You see, because we don't want to fall, okay, into that number, okay. Well, he's bringing, all right, these bad times for the wicked. Matter of fact, we'll get a precept in a minute to expound on that. All right. We're going back. So now let's go into what it says about the individual, because it said people will be lovers of themselves, man. Okay. And when you go here, um, mm, it says it's today's culture born to self-worship, okay, and individualism. It says here we shift from belief in the higher power to focus on self, which you term self-worship. They said there are two related but distinct phenomena: a rise in individualism, self-focus, and a change in how people express spirituality, religion, which may include self-directed spirituality. Research shows that individualistic values and practices have increased globally and especially in developed societies. For instance, a study across 78 countries found individualistic practices values increased by 12% worldwide since 1960. In the U.S., quality research shows that individualism remains a dominant cultural mindset. People tend to explain social problems by individual choice, emphasis personal responsibility, and prioritize self-expression. Okay, and that's why everybody's a YouTube influencer. Everybody want to push their personal influence. Okay, in society, it's all about me. It's all about self. Okay, how this made you feel, what you think should be done about the situation. Okay, it is a very self-absorbed, narcissistic society, man. Community is gone. Community is dead. Except amongst, all right, the hopeful elect. Okay, and then everything else is dead. Okay, and you add, a lack of resources in the equation, man. All right, and you got the purge. Okay, these people already have the mindset. These people are already geared up to purge each other out. Okay, when things get scarce, it says sociologists note that with modernity, all right, secularization, economic development, and decline of traditional communities, institutions, people increasingly emphasize autonomy, uniqueness, okay, and self, all right, realization, okay, and see, people are able to, and Esau pushes individualism because it's easily to manipulate an individual, okay. When you have community, when you have shared beliefs, shared traditions and standards and expectations amongst a community, it's harder to, penetrate that. It's harder to infiltrate that. All right. But an individual is easy to enchant an individual, a bunch of individuals. Okay. And it says scholars talk about things like Shialism, a common term for highly individualized, electric, and self directed belief system, which reflect the shift from communal institutional religion to customized personal spirituality, concept of autotheism or egotism, belief in oneself as divine, all right, is part of discussion and cultural critique, okay, around self-worship and self-deification, man. Okay. And this is what this is the dominant culture of society. Self-worship, self-deification. Okay. Everybody got these titles that they give themselves. Okay. Everybody got these, have made themselves, everybody's a celebrity on the internet. Okay. So these are the times that Apostle Paul, okay, was speaking about, man. When you go here, let's get and this is why the Lord finna bring in these times, because pride finna be brought low. Okay, this is Sirach 39. All right, and jump down 28. It said, "There be spirits that are created for vengeance, which in their fury lay on sore strokes. In the time of destruction, they pour out their force and appease the wrath of him that made them. Fire and hell, famine and death, all these were created for vengeance. Teeth of wild beasts, all right, and scorpions, serpents, and the sword, punishing the wicked to destruction, man." Okay, so the Lord it has a vengeance, okay, that He's going to execute, beginning with Esau, Edom, the rulers, okay, and 2/3 of our people, all right, that are hand in hand with this man, all right, that are linked, that are in the image of this devil, okay. So all these things were created to punish the wicked for destruction, man. The wicked of our people, all right, and the wicked of the earth, Esau, all right, and these heathens that's under his umbrella. Okay. So these times, all right, the worst time ever is finna clash, all right, with the most proud people ever. Okay. That's how the Lord got it set up. The Lord's a perfect judge. You see? He's gonna issue out the punishment, all right, there's meat. Okay. Let's go here real quick to Isaiah. All right, Isaiah chapter 2. Isaiah 2 and 11. It says, "Human pride will be brought down, and human arrogance will be humbled. Only the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah will be exalted on that day of judgment." Okay? So pride is going to be brought low, and there's going to be a great humbling with the times that the Lord is about to bring to the earth, man. Okay? So let's go back here to 2 Timothy chapter 3. All right, 2 Timothy 3 and 2, it said, "For people will love only themselves and their money. They will be boastful and proud, scoffing at the Most High, disobedient to their parents and ungrateful. They will consider nothing sacred. They will be unloving and unforgiving. They will slander others and have no self-control, no discipline, man." Okay? This is why you see people in the predicaments that they're in on the internet crying because of no discipline. Okay, they will be cruel and hate what is good, and you can see, all right, that there's just this, trend, this uptick, okay, and being against the Hebrew Israelites, man. All right, even Jake that do be doing too much, at least they're telling you to put the drugs down, okay. At least they're telling you stop killing each other, okay. At least they're telling, you know, you're Israelites, okay. But at the end of the day, this society is geared to hate anything that's good. It's anti-Messiah, and especially the true prophets that come, all right, in the spirit of Yahweh Shai, man. This world hates that. Okay, this world hates that order. All right. Now, when you go into Second Timothy 3 and 4 says they will portray their friends, be reckless, be puffed up with pride. And we went into what's about to happen to pride, and love pleasure rather than the Most High. And this is just a pleasure loving society. Okay. People live, okay, just for pleasure. People, okay, scam, scheme, okay. You see, you got Jake grifting the church because Jake love pleasure, man. Okay, Jake love, to do as thou wilt, the pleasure buffet of Rome. Okay, because in America, all right, in the West, okay, it's a society where you can just have your fix whenever you want, whatever you can afford. That's why, it's so cutthroat about money, because you can just pleasure yourself unlimited as much as you can afford. As much drugs as you can afford, much liquor as you can afford, much women as you can afford. Okay? Fine eating as you can afford, which we know, there's BS. Most of the food. Okay? Well, Jake is addicted to the additives and, the process anyway. Okay? But this society offers you as much as you can afford. Okay, and that's another thing why people be reckless, going to crashing out. You see, to be reckless, crashing out. Okay, so the Apostle Paul, he's describing, the times, okay, the atmosphere that will come, okay, before the judgment. This is a pre-flood atmosphere, because you go to Genesis, and you'll link the two up. All right, you go to the actual account in Genesis, and then you link it with what Yahweh Shah said. Well, you got 2 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 4. Okay? This is Genesis 6 and 5. It says, this is NLT, said the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on earth, and he saw that everything they thought or imagined was constantly and totally evil. This is before the flood. Okay, and this is the mindset of this society, man. People are just fixated on their wickedness, man. Okay, people, even in a time here and there, you might be in a food crisis, and people are only concerned about what wicked holidays. Okay, that's people's mindset. Abominable foods, adultery. Okay, scamming. This is the mindset of the masses. Okay, consistently and totally evil. Okay, so the Lord was sorry he had ever made them and put them on earth. It broke his heart. So you go here. All right, and then you read that, you think, that things got out of hand from the Most High, and he just, up there sad. No. Okay, they're just an expression, okay, of his anger in the earth about what was going on. And the Lord's in full control. Okay, he allowed things to get to a certain point to show his power. Okay, and this is the time he's going to do it again, and this is going to be the last time he has to do it. Okay, Genesis 6 and 11 says, now the Most High saw that the earth had become corrupt and filled with violence. Okay, is this not this society? Mass shooting every goddamn where. You can't even go to the homecoming, high school game anymore, man. College homecoming shot, everything. Okay, mass shooting is normal now. Okay, it said, now the Most High saw that the earth had become corrupt and was filled with violence. The Most High observed all this corruption in the world, for everyone on earth was corrupt, man. Okay, it is a very corrupted system, man. Everyone has some type of corrupt angle. You know, like I say, people are, no one's authentic. Everyone's up to something, scheming in some type of way. You can only go so far with most people in this society for, you really see what they own. That's why Lord has us withdrawn more and more. Okay. So, um, let's go here. So there was the violence and corruption aspect. Okay, but you go here to the book of Matthew. All right. I might want to get that one in Luke. Luke, go to Solomon and Gomorrah as well. Let me get that one. And Luke. All right, this is the book of Luke, I believe it's 17. Luke 17 and 26, it says, when the Son of Man returns, it will be like in Noah's day. In those days, the people enjoy banquets and parties and weddings right up to the time Noah entered his boat and the flood came and destroyed them all. Okay? So he had that party. All right? You understand, during the time of Noah, you don't think they had nightlives and parties and concerts and okay, it wasn't a primitive society, man. That was a developed society. All right, that the Lord destroyed. Okay, all type of adultery, freakism. Okay, and it says, and the world will be as it was in the days of Lot, going back to Sodom and Gomorrah. People went about their daily business, eating and drinking, buying and selling, farming and building. You see, so it was a corrupt society. Okay, and people, hey, they had their things going. Everyone had their thing going on. You don't think it was hyper individuals back then? People was just into what they had going on. Okay, until the morning, Lot left Sodom, then fire and burning sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. Okay, so we seen the same setup. All right, from pre-flood. Okay, and pre-Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, that's why the Lord is going to rain missiles on America, man. It's like combining, both judgments. Okay, instead of raining with water, okay, he's gonna rain with missiles. Okay, that's why what America also known as a lake of fire. Compared to water, he's gonna engulf this place. Just like he engulfed the world with water, he's gonna engulf America. Okay, with fire, man. Okay, because America represents the motherland, the source of this wicked influence in the earth, man. Okay, verse 5 it says they will act religious, but they will reject the power that could make them godly. Stay away from people like that, man. And the Lord has us isolated more than ever, man. Let these people have it. Let Jake have it. Okay. The Lord really, he's finna make a move. The Lord finna make a move on this society, man. Okay, we do what we gotta do. Certain situations require us to be around, when we should be in the mindset of being secluded more and more. Okay, verse 6 says they are the kind who work their way into people's homes and win the confidence of vulnerable women who are burdened with guilt of sin and controlled by various desires, man. All right, and you see, even they talk about Christianity's decline, and well, who's left in Christianity? The woman. Okay? Who's on the front line? You look at the woman, they're on the front line for all these different beliefs. All right. You look at Christianity, the woman. Okay. You look at the left liberals. All right. The woman, BLM, and all, going crazy for Kamala. Okay. Is a woman. These false Israelite camps. They full of what? Women. All right. Silly women. Okay. That's burdened with guilt. All right. And various desires, man, easily manipulated. Okay. All these things are happening now, man. So Apostle Paul, it was a heavy spirit of prophecy. These things were happening then, okay, but much more now. All right, verse 7. It says, "Such women are forever following new teachings, but they are never able to understand the truth." You know, and we apply this, for men as well. Okay, you got Jake that's all over the place because the internet is a gift and a curse because if you're not of the elect, man, the internet gonna have you all over the place, following this and following that. Okay, but for the hopeful elect, it led us to sound teaching, man. Okay, but if you're not of the elect, man, the internet is a curse unto you. But King David said, "Let their table be a snare unto them." The thing that's supposed to benefit, has became a trap. Okay, it doesn't work for you. You see, and that's why another reason we should be, privileged and honored that the Lord is dealing with us. Okay, because there's only a few, all right, that the Lord has allowed, to come into this understanding, to come into this faith, to know what we're a part of. Okay, a lot of our people are all over the place, and it's done intentionally like that. It said these teachers oppose the truth, just as Janus and Jambres opposed Moses. They have depraved minds and they counterfeit faith. Okay, but they won't get away with this for long. Someday everyone will recognize what fools they are, just as with Janus, all right, and Jambres. Okay, and when you go into that, all right, just look at this history of what Apostle Paul was speaking of. All right. All right. So when you go into it, it said Janus and Jambres are the two magicians mentioned in the New Testament as having opposed Moses. Okay, it said they appear by name only once in the Bible. All right. And it says Paul is writing to Timothy comparing corrupt teachers in his own time to the Egyptian magicians who resisted Moses. In the book of Exodus, the magicians of Pharaoh's court opposed Moses, all right, when he performed signs, all right, before Pharaoh. Pharaoh then summoned wise men and sorcerers and Egyptian magicians also did the same thing by their secret arts. But the magicians of Egypt did the same things by their secret arts, and Pharaoh's heart became hard. So as Pharaoh's all right magicians were able to imitate some of the things that Moses was doing, and they played a factor in hardening his heart. And the Most High today, either you're enchanted directly by Esau or, false teachings, false Israelite camps, you're being hardened. Even how Nate teach, Nate is able to, he's like a magician. He's able to put things together and make it sound right, and make it to where people that follow him double down. Sakari was good at that. Alazar. And then you still got Genesis and Hassad, Deacon Hassad. They're able, to imitate real prophets. Okay. they're able to put things together like they on point, like the Lord dealing with them. Okay, and it makes the people that follow them double down. Okay, because the Lord, 2/3 need prophets too. They need, teachers. Okay, they need to be solidified for their destruction. They need to be just as the elect needs to be constantly edified. You know, they need to be constantly hardened. Okay, for their judgment. It said these magicians could imitate some of Moses' early miracles, turning staffs into serpents, turning water into blood, and bringing up frogs, but they failed when Moses brought forth gnats, and they admitted this is the finger of the Most High. So the Most High, all right, allowed them to imitate to a degree, you know. Then he began to pull off on them, you know. So when you go here, all right, it said they are often portrayed as the chief sorcerers of Egypt, representing rebellion and counterfeit spirituality, man. Okay, so the Apostle Paul is bringing up their history, comparing false teachers in Ephesus, that's putting on to Janus and Jambres. Okay, and you have a lot of that going on. You know, you certain, even these big mega pastors, you see people falling out, and same thing, man. All right, nothing new under the sun. It said, verse 10, it says, but you, Timothy, certainly know what I teach and how I live and what my purpose in life is. You know my faith, my patience, my love, and endurance. You know how much persecution and suffering I have endured. You know all that. You know all about how I was persecuted in Antioch, Iconium, and Lystra, but the Lord rescued me from all of it. Yes, and everyone who wants to live a godly life in Yahweh Shah HaMashiach will suffer persecution. Okay, so he's letting Timothy know that you ain't gonna get around the persecution. Okay, this is an evil world. They was in the anti-Messiah society then. Okay, pagan Rome. All right, now pagan Rome is back with more technology, man. Okay, it said, but evil people and imposters will flourish. See, this is their world. You see, and this is why the Spirit has us checked out. This is their world, man. This is the world where Esau and wickedness flourish, man. Okay, 2/3 like this they world. This you gotta bow out, okay, and let these people have this, man. Nigga culture, hey, let them have all this shit. This is the time where they flourish. Okay, that's why the worst niggas are celebrated. Okay, the sorriest women are celebrated. This day world. Okay, the wicked himself, Esau, celebrated. Let these people have this shit, man. Okay, it said they will deceive others and will deceive. It says and will be themselves. All right, and will themselves be deceived. Okay, because the Most High has these people in a trick bag. Everybody think they got it. Everybody think they getting out. Let's say the earth is full of scammers, especially in the West, man. Especially here in America. But they're only deceived. Okay, the Most High gonna show, that he's been building the case the whole time. All right. It said, but you must remain faithful to those things which you have been taught. You know they are true, for you can trust those who taught you. Okay. And going back to our apostles and elders, man, we can trust what we've been taught. We understand what we've been taught and who we've been taught by. Okay, ain't no swing. We know that the Lord is dealing with these men for the edification of the church. Okay, so we stick to the doctrine of our apostles and elders, man. We operate within the framework of the doctrine that they teach. Okay. Brothers got their own perspectives, and brothers doing different research and bringing, things out, but it's within the framework of what's already been established, man. You know, that's why even some things that brothers get into, you might go into. It might just be for you. You don't bring it out because uh you want to stay within the framework of what's being taught. Okay, because you look at these other camps, and you see certain of their men teach different things. You see, it was just confusion. Okay, 2 Timothy 3:15. All right, and what I'm saying, you keep certain things to yourself because it can cause more confusion than edification. You know, because certain things, you might get a revelation on something, and it's not nothing that's opposing the doctrine, just something that you read and research, and you might you know, but everything ain't meant to be brought out as doctrine, okay? Because it's all about the edification and salvation, not trying to be super deep or prolific, okay? And it says 2 Timothy 3:15, it says, you have been taught the Holy Spirit from childhood, okay? Because Timothy was born into it, his grandmother, all right, his mother was into the faith, so he was third generation, you know. And as we, come in, okay, as children, as newborns, okay, it says, and they have given you the wisdom to receive the salvation that comes from trusting in Yahweh Shah HaMashiach, man. And this Bible full of wisdom that's leading towards salvation. The scriptures, like when we as we're getting ready to go through what we're going through, man, it's going to be the precepts that's in us that's going to, keep us rooted, keep us stable. All right, because the earth is going to get chaotic, but what's going to anchor us down is this wisdom, this understanding. It said all scripture is inspired by the Most High and useful to teach us what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives and correct us. Now, if I can get this in the KJV, these last two. It said all scripture is given by inspiration of the Most High and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness. Okay? So, amongst the hopeful elect, this Bible is governing us, man. We say it's profitable for doctrine. We get the correct understanding and breakdowns. Okay? Hey, through precept on precept, line upon line, for reproof. All right, and correction. Well, we are correct according to this word. You see, we get corrected. We correct false doctrines. We correct off behavior and mindset based off the scriptures, man. And it's all for instructions in righteousness, man, which making us pleasing to our power. Okay, it says the man of the Most High may be perfect, thoroughly furnished. All right, that the man of the Most High may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works, man. So these scriptures is equipping us, all right, with the tools needed, okay, to execute good works in the spirit. You see? So that's the point, just wanted to get into that, 2 Timothy, all right, chapter 3, so Lord will you brothers, all right, and you sisters edified. Till next time I say Shalom, Poem Yashala, Babal, soon, Shalom.